So that was a bit of information about the interventions that are included in STEMscopes. Let's look next at some of the literacy resources that are found here in the toolbox, in addition to ones that you'll see in just a moment are included in each of the scopes. So one of the great ones is the Master Vocabulary List. I'll take just a moment to look at that with you. So I will scroll down here to our Tennessee one. Since when we have our unique logins, that you will be able to see your Tennessee ones, probably just those alone instead of having to scroll like we do here on this account. But you can see with each of the scopes that there is a listing of the words and definitions that are included within the scope. On occasion, and we'll discuss this and something that I'll be pairing with you and MCLs on for your work during planning time, is thinking about, in addition to the distinct vocabulary words that are included in each scope, what other ones might we need to include that may not be there. Each scope, as you see, has several vocabulary words that are integral to the understanding of of the concepts in that scope. However, there are times that we may want to add to that, and so that's where during planning that we want to think of what some of those additional words might be and how that we might want to present them to students. But this is a listing for all of the various scopes, what the vocabulary that is discussed and activities are provided around. So it's quite an exhaustive list. And I'll also show you in an individual scope where these can be accessed for planning purposes as well. So also in literacy, in that section of the toolbox, are some vocabulary cards. And very helpful for vocabulary acquisition because we know as teachers that vocabulary is integral to science learning, and for students to truly comprehend the concepts that are involved in science. It is often one of the, if not the, but one of the greatest factors in whether or not students, are successful in mastering the concepts in science. So I do want to spend a bit of time here. Now, you will notice here on the right, and you'll see this a lot within STEMscopes, that there are links to editable Google files for these vocabulary resources. And we'll talk more this Friday, and then certainly on the 12th, about how STEMscopes is compatible with Google Classroom. And it very much is. So let's look at this blank vocabulary card to start. And this kind of goes right along with Marzano's approach to vocabulary, where you might have the, I might put the definition, the word, then the vocabulary word, then the definition, draw a picture of what that represents to me as a student, provide an example, and then provide a non-example. And so this gives room, here just on one sheet to get several words, which is helpful. And so this could go right into a science notebook, which is something, that a lot of science teachers like to use, and something that we can discuss further as well, and that you can discuss with your MCLs. Take this back. And so you'll notice that anything there that was downloadable. Also over here, when we go to our Google file, we can make a copy And then there it is in Google, and then it can be shared to Classroom. We also have Lexile conversion charts. We have more information about the literacy toolbox, some more graphic organizers related to literacy. Since science, of course, has so much literacy integrated in it. There are also leveled reading passages here, various vocabulary strategies that you'll see for kindergarten through 5th grade. And then in the middle school toolbox, same thing. So for Ms. Hayes, that resource is there as well. Nature of science, we have more information about how science is the exploration of the world and kind of how to introduce it to students in the beginning of the year. Is what these resources are primarily about. Then there are also interactives built in. I'll go to one of those with you. These are definitely helpful in a virtual learning space with all of our students being one-to-one on a computer. And I'm really excited about that. Students will have computers, one-to-one throughout the year because that allows them to directly interact with these things. If you've ever used something like Gizmos for science, this is very similar. So you can see how that students are asked questions and then asked to complete the activity. So I'll do one with the chrysalis and I'll choose a wrong answer to see what it tells me. It tells me that one's wrong. And then when I'm correct, celebrates that. And then different drag and drop opportunities for students to engage with that vocabulary. All right, I am going to return to the top to my scopes. Look briefly at the middle school one. You see very similar headlines at the top. So very similar subjects or resources to what we saw in the elementary. So it is extremely helpful that there are resources here for reading intervention to help students who may need that differentiation. So as you can see, there are probes for teachers, probes for the student to help them more highly engage with the curriculum. All right. To take us back to scopes again. And so now I'm going to take us into one of these scopes. So I'm going to go to 2nd grade, choose that one, and one that particularly resonates with me I'll go to is inheritance and variation of traits. So like I mentioned earlier, you will receive a scope and sequence, for each 9 weeks that will tell you which one of these that you start with. Actually, let me look back. So you'll see that for 2nd grade, there are it's like 18 scopes for the year. And in general, it takes about 5 to 7 days to cover a scope. some more, some about a week, some a little more than a week. Some might possibly even be less than a week. Let me take you back into inheritance, variation, or traits. And so the scopes will cover, all the DCIs with life science, physical science, and into some earth science. So you will notice first, across the top, you have your 5Es. Then in addition, what STEMscopes calls it is 5E plus IA, with the intervention and acceleration components. I'm going to first take us over here to look at some of the essentials, and I highly recommend that you look through the Standards Unwrapped and the teacher background before beginning a new scope. Those are the things that will be used first during planning before looking at the materials in the 5Es plus IA. And when I say that a scope takes in general about 5 to 7 days to complete, that's because typically in elementary, when you have about 30 minutes a day or so for science, then it's going to take about a day to do one of the E's. So this entire scope, inheritance and variation of traits, is done over about a week to, like I said, 6 to 7 days, usually maximum for it, typically a week. And it's on one day, perhaps engage and explore can be combined. That certainly can happen with some of the shorter engage. Sometimes it may take an entire day to think through that. But you do move during your planning. You can think of it for the 5Es at least from left to right. You'll always start with engage, then you'll go to explore, then to explain, then to elaborate, then to evaluate. It does go in that order. And there will be some evaluation built into the scope before you get to evaluate at the end. For instance, a lot of the explore activities have an evaluation built into them. So before we go into the 5Es, IA, let's go over here to the essentials. And let's look first at the Standards Unwrapped.